If you were into BMX in the 80s, you knew the name Hutch. Hutch had some amazing bikes like the Pro Racer, the Trick Star, the Expert Racer, the Special K. So what happened to them? How did they go from having this super high reputation to seemingly disappearing? Let's find out. In the late 70s, two brothers by the name of Rich Jr. and Keith Hutchins were enjoying adolescence, playing kickball, riding bicycles, yo-yos, watching Happy Days, and racing motocross. At the time, bicycle motocross was starting to blow up, and owners of motocross tracks would build small BMX courses in the infield for people to ride between motos. The Hutchins brothers started playing around on the courses and quickly fell in love with the new sport. And as we have said time and time again on this channel, a lot of these early BMX companies started, why? Because of the love of a father for his children. Enter Rich Hutchins Sr., the father in this story, and a salesman for Sears at the time. One of the biggest differences for the Hutchins family was location. One of BMX's birthplaces was the west coast of the United States, and thus, a lot of the early popular companies started in California on the west coast. The Hutchins lived on the east coast, which was a few years behind in terms of BMX, and Rich started thinking he would open up a bicycle shop, start a small family-owned business. They lived in Maryland at the time, and this would be an opportunity to get some good quality BMX products from the west coast for his kids to ride. And thus, the OG brick-and-mortar Hutchins bike shop was born. And I honestly looked, but I could not find what the actual name of the original bike shop was called. It could have been called Hutch. I couldn't really find that. If you know what the original bike shop was called, I'd love to know. Leave it down below in the comments. Richard was ordering parts from the West Coast, where most BMX brands were based out of, for his own kids. I kind of picture it like this. Rich Jr. and Keith were going to these local races all decked out with the latest and greatest, and other kids were like, holy crap, where did you get that? And what is it? And the Hutchins brothers said, I know a place. Anyway, I don't really know how true that scenario is, but word did get around and all the kids wanted in. The demand for the equipment soon led Rich into the mail order business. This portion of the business exploded. It was bigger than Mr. Hutchins imagined it would be, and after only being open for 6 months, he closed the doors to his brick-and-mortar bike shop and started to focus solely on the mail order business. Since Richard Hutchins was a salesman and not a welder or a mechanic like so many other dads on this channel, he took a different path. Instead of making his own products, he simply paid another company to make quality products for him. Shorten his last name up and you now have the first official Hutch products. I mean, that is typically how it's done nowadays anyway, but since he wasn't super worried about the design of the product at Hutch's inception, the one thing Rich did focus on was marketing. He knew the companies he picked to make his product were good companies, but he wanted to do something that would set Hutch apart. Rich wanted all of his stuff to be show chrome plated, which was getting popular at the time. So not only did he want nice, quality products with the Hutch name on them, he wanted it to look good. Hutchins started by getting a set of cranks made by what would become the now popular profile design. The Hutch high-performance cranks were chromoly tubing arms with triple-plated show chrome, and rumored as being lighter than a Takagi crank setup. But this led to a whole slew of products getting made with the Hutch name slapped on them, but one thing was for certain. Chrome plating was popular, and oh boy did Hutch chrome plate their products. The first true Hutch bicycles were built by Speed Unlimited in New Jersey, and the first production frames were somewhere around September-October of 1980. Hutch was gaining in popularity at an alarming rate and decided to move their facility to a bigger location, hire some welders, and start making their very own frames and forks. This led Hutch to closing the mail order shop to concentrate their efforts strictly on manufacturing in 1982. I almost can't fathom the speed at which Hutch grew. Hutchins literally went from a local bike shop, closing that in 6 months to move into a bigger location for their mail order business, then closing the mail order business after a couple years to focus on making their own product. He was a Sears salesman to owning a manufacturing facility in just a handful of years. The company's first completed bike was called the Hutch Pro Racer. It featured a lot of chrome, of course, and at over $400, Hutch had some of the most expensive BMX bikes on the market at the time. Even now, $400 for a complete bike is it's not the cheapest thing on the market, and that's in today's time. To help promote the mail order business and his new frame and fork, Rich put together a team. Rich knew, because he was a salesman and because he was in the motocross world, that one of the best things you can do to market a new race bike is to get it in the hands of pro racers. Hutchins' first big-name rider was Rich Farside. Sales of the Hutch frame and fork were exceeding expectations, and therefore Hutch began looking for additional riders to help market. Hutch made some great products, don't get me wrong, but I think Rich Sr. being a salesman and focusing on the marketing of his brand is what really made Hutch launch, and in my eyes, this really took off when he started to create the Hutch team. The first team really only consisted of Rich Farside and Tim Judge, and through the years, the Hutch team would grow to be one of the most popular and most diverse teams at the time. Not only were they doing well in races, but they also had guys killing it in the newly formed freestyle discipline. There was a lot of brands that either focused solely on the racing aspect or the freestyle aspect. Not a lot actually split both ways and did both well. Tons of people, too many to list, rode for Hutch. Toby Henderson, Tim Judge, Charlie Williams, Greg Liggins, Steve Veltman, Brad Moore, Jason Griggs, Mike Dominguez, Woody Itzen, and of course, Hollywood Mike Miranda. Hutch was doing great, but Rich was always thinking of new ways to market and sell his bike. And he had connections with Sears, because he was a salesman for them. So he decided to try something a little different. What if he produced a cheap Hutch bike and sold it only in Canada and only in Sears? This way he can try to break into the mass market and compete with juggernauts like Huffy, but he wouldn't really be messing with the American market that was doing well. Thus, the Hutch 500 Cell Pro was born, and that was a mistake. I couldn't find the exact number, but Rich Sr. did comment that this was one of the biggest regrets with Hutch, and it did affect US sales. The bike was a department store bike. Hutch, of course, went on to make some amazing bikes, with my personal favorite being the Trickstar, which was designed in conjunction with Woody Itzen. I loved the Trickstar, and I still do. I think it's a crazy bike because it was designed for flatland, for freestyle by Woody. There's a cool article, I'll leave the link below, where he describes how the bike was designed. He really shaped and molded it with the help of Hutch engineers, so it was a tag team to make this cool, new, innovative bike, but it's a cool bike. Anyway, there was a good 5 years where it seemed like Hutch was going to be the king of BMX. Not saying that they weren't one of the top brands after, but for a hot minute they were the head of the pack. They were the kings.
And for Team Hutch, Hollywood, Mike Miranda. Then there's the independent, the privateer for Rad Racing, Crew Jones.
I know that kid.
Now we are approaching that infamous 10-year mark that we all discuss on this channel. I'm sure that Rich's kids were finishing high school, maybe moving on to other things, and Hutch was doing great. So maybe this 10-year mark, it was about time Rich didn't really want to be the head of the company anymore. Enter William Bellis Sr. I will let BMX Action fill you in. This is from the July 1987 issue of BMX Action. Hutch has been sold, or been bought, depending on which way you look at it. The new owner is William Bellis Sr., a very well-off businessman who flies all over the US in his personal Learjet and owns 25 different companies, some of them bicycle-related. Richard Hutchins, who will still be running the company, says Bellis has owned Louisville Cycle for quite a while and just purchased Columbus Cycles last year. Hutch is now considered to be a division of Columbus Cycles, having distribution centers in a lot of places. Hutch describes the deal as being good for us, good for them, and good for everyone. So Bill Bellis, rich man that already owns tons and tons of companies, wanted to own Hutch as well, wanted his own BMX company, and purchased it. This is usually the start of the end, and I don't think Hutch is any exception to that. At the time, Bill Bellis was the owner of Hutch, but Rich was still going to run the company. After reading some interviews, I did get the impression that the Hutchins didn't care too much for Bill. Rich's wife said that she never liked him, and Rich himself seemed to have a chip on his shoulder about moving production offshore. Rich did argue with Bill and others at the Hutch company that it wasn't a good move, but Rich essentially got outvoted, and Hutch started producing its premium product overseas. The market was shifting and the BMX boom was starting to wind down. As Hutch themselves put it, with a changing market and a changing leadership, Hutch lost its identity. Then at the end of the 80s, Hutch actually got sued by Hutch Sports USA over their name, and somewhere around the late 80s they started using the name Hutchins. And in 1992, Hutch ceased operations and closed up shop. That is partially due to the decline in BMX popularity, but I don't think it helped that Bill owned a slew of companies and could take or leave Hutch, which is ultimately what happened. He left it. And that's where it ends. That's what happened to Hutch, the OG Hutch. You know, a lot of these videos we kind of focus on what happened to the initial inception, the core group of people that started it. You know, that is the focus of this here little video. But for a quick roundup, where is Hutch now? In '92, Jay Beck purchased Hutch from Bill. I found multiple sources stating the fact that Jay did purchase Hutch, and he also did Revcore. But there was one quote disputing this fact. So if anyone knows the actual story of Hutch after Bill, leave a comment, get in contact with me. I'd love to do a follow-up video about a lot of these companies, like where are they now. And then around 2008, there was like rumors of Hutch coming back. They started making bikes again, that kind of thing. And then I believe in 2021, or maybe right before COVID happened, again, the name was kind of making a resurgence a little bit. And if you go to their website, I mean, they do have some products for sale, but you know, no complete bikes, some pre-orders for the Trickstar frame and fork. But I haven't really found much about this newest iteration of Hutch, who owns it, that sort of thing. But I did want to give you a quick update of where they are right now. There you have it. That's what happened to Hutch. Please, if you did make it this far, like, subscribe, comment down below. Let me know what other brands you want me to investigate. I'm gonna start pivoting a little bit and going towards some of the professional racers at the time as well, so leave those suggestions below. I do have the membership thing going. If you want to be a part of that, it's really just to help support this endeavor that I'm doing, and I do release the videos a little bit early for the members. But yeah, that's what I have for you. Thank you so much for joining me today on this little, I won't call it a deep dive, but a dive nonetheless on Hutch, and I will see you all in the next one. Thank you. Love you. Bye-bye. Come here, buddy. Come on. He won't leave me alone. You gotta lay down, though. Lay down. What a ham sandwich.